You're trying to decide between Roth and traditional retirement accounts, you've probably heard a lot of conflicting advice. Some people say Roths are always better, others swear by the tax deductions that traditional IRAs bring. The truth is, most people get the foundational math wrong, and when you start with bad math, everything else becomes unnecessarily complicated. I'm Danny Gudorf, and over the last 15 years, my team and I have helped hundreds of people over 50 make smarter decisions about their tax planning. Today, I'm going to show you the simple math that changes everything, and once you understand it, the Roth versus traditional decision becomes a lot clearer. Let's start with the biggest mistake people make. They think Roth is automatically better because it's tax-free in retirement, or they think traditional is always smarter because you get a tax deduction today. But here's what most people miss. If your tax rate stays the same, Roth and traditional give you the exact same spendable amount in retirement after taxes. Let me show you what I mean by this. Let's say you have $10,000 of earnings from your job, or maybe you have $10,000 sitting in a traditional IRA and you're thinking about converting it to a Roth. We're going to compare two paths, the traditional path and the Roth path. And we're going to keep everything else the same so we can see if one is actually better than the other. Here's how the traditional path works. You start with $10,000 in an IRA, you don't pay taxes on it today, and that money grows over time. Let's say it earns around 8% per year for 8 years. We're going to use those numbers because the math is much easier. Your $10,000 doubles to $20,000, but now you want to take that money out in retirement and spend it, but you have to pay taxes on it. Let's say your tax rate is 25%, which includes state and federal taxes. You would pay $5,000 in taxes, and that leaves you with $15,000 to actually spend. That's your spendable amount. Now, let's take a look at the Roth path. Let's say you start with that same $10,000, but with the Roth, you have to pay the taxes up front. So at that same 25% tax rate, it's $2,500 in taxes. So you'll only have $7,500 left to invest in the Roth. That $7,500 grows at the same rate over the same period of time. It doubles $15,000 over that time frame. And because it's Roth, there's no taxes when you take it out. You get to spend all $15,000. Do you see what just happened there? Both paths give you the same $15,000 to spend. The net spendable amount is exactly the same. This is the foundational math that everyone needs to understand. If your tax rate is the same when you put the money in and the same when you take the money out, it doesn't matter which path you choose. You always end up with the same money in the end. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What if I invest my Roth more aggressively than my traditional account? Won't that make a difference? Sure, but that's not the tax question. That's an investment question. You could just invest your traditional account more aggressively too, and you would get the same exact result. The point is, the rate of return doesn't change the tax math. What matters is the tax rate when you contribute your money and the tax rate when you withdraw your money. This is where people get confused. They think if they extend the time period longer or change the rate of return, the math will change. Or they think if they contribute differently, the outcomes will be different, but it won't. This is basic mathematics. It doesn't matter what order you multiply things in. 10 times 2 times 0.75 equals the same thing as 10 times 0.75 times 2. That's something we all learned in school, but we forget it applies here too. So if the spendable amount is the same when tax rates are equal, why does this decision matter at all? Because tax rates don't always stay the same. There are 4 main reasons you might choose one path over the other. The first reason is if your tax rate will be higher in retirement. If you're paying 12% in taxes today, but you'll be paying 22% taxes in retirement, then the Roth decision makes a lot of sense. You pay the lower rate now and avoid the higher tax rate later. This can happen if you're really good at saving and you end up with a lot of retirement income, or if the government raises taxes in the future, or if you're married filing jointly now, but you'll be filing as a widower later, which pushes you into a higher tax bracket. The second reason is if your tax rate will be lower in retirement. This is actually more common than most people think. A lot of folks are in the 22 or 24% bracket while they're working, but in retirement, their income drops. They're not earning a salary anymore, Social Security isn't fully taxed, and they can control how much they withdraw from their accounts. So they end up in the 10 or 12% tax bracket in retirement. If this is your situation, traditional makes more sense. While you're paying 22% today, when you can be paying 12% later in retirement. The third reason is if you're maxing out your contribution limits. Let's say you're going to be contributing the maximum to your 401k no matter what. If you max out a Roth, you're effectively putting more money away than if you max out a traditional account. That's because the Roth contribution is after tax. All of it is yours, when the traditional part of it belongs to the IRS. Now, another way to go about doing this, and could be the best strategy, is to max out your traditional IRA and then invest the tax savings somewhere else in a brokerage account. But a lot of people don't do that. So if you're just going to max your retirement accounts either way, maxing out your Roth puts more money to work in savings for you. The fourth reason is tax diversification. This is about giving yourself options in retirement. You have money in traditional accounts, Roth accounts, and regular taxable accounts. You can control your tax bracket in retirement if you have this set up. You can fill up the lower tax brackets with traditional withdrawals and then take money from your Roth or your taxable accounts without pushing yourself into higher tax brackets. This gives you what one of my clients, who's an engineer, calls degrees of freedom. You're not locked into just one path. You can adjust it based upon what's happening in your life and what the tax rates are like at that time. Let me give you an example of this and see how this works. Let's say you're single and you need $100,000 a year in retirement to spend. You could take $50,000 from your traditional IRA and pay only 10 or 12% tax on it. Then you could sell some of your investments from your taxable brokerage account. Maybe you sell $30,000 worth of stocks, but only $15,000 of it has gain. Because you're in that lower tax bracket, you might pay 0% on those long-term capital gains. Then you could top it off with $20,000 from your Roth or your HSA account if it's being used for qualified medical expenses. You just created $100,000 of spendable income and kept your tax bill very low. That's the power of having options. Now, let's talk about required minimum distributions, because this is where a lot of people get scared. They hear about RMDs and they think they're going to get crushed by taxes later on in retirement. But here's the reality. Even if you have $1.5 million in your IRA, your required minimum distributions at age 73 or 75 is only going to be around $60,000 starting out. If that stacks on top of your Social Security, you might be in the 22% tax bracket. But that's probably still lower than the bracket you were in when you were working. So don't panic about your RMDs. A lot of times they're not as bad as people make them out to be. I've had clients come to me feeling guilty that they didn't do more Roth contributions when they were younger. But when I run the numbers, I find out that they were in a very high tax bracket then, and they're in a lower tax bracket now. They ended up making the right choice without even knowing it. So don't beat yourself up about it and past decisions. Focus on what you can control today and moving forward. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The foundational math is simple. Same tax rates equals same spendable amount. Once you understand that, you can focus on the real tax question, which is, will your tax rate be higher or lower in retirement? That's the question that truly matters. And the answer is different for every family. It depends on how much you've saved, how much you'll spend, and what the government does with tax rates. Also, whether you're single or married when you're taking this money out makes a big difference. One more thing, a lot of people think they need to go all Roth or all traditional, but that's not true. You can do both. In fact, you probably should do both. Having money in different types of accounts gives you flexibility, and flexibility is one of the most valuable things you can have in retirement. So here's what I recommend. If you're in a low tax bracket today, lean towards Roth. If you're in a high tax bracket today, and you expect to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement, then lean towards those traditional retirement accounts. And if you're not sure, split the difference between the two. Do some of both. And if you're already retired, think about whether you have enough tax diversification or not. If everything is in those traditional retirement accounts, you might want to start doing some Roth conversions while you're in these lower tax brackets. The key is to stop thinking about this as an all or nothing decision, because it's not. It's about understanding the math and knowing your own unique situation and making the choices that give you the most spendable income over your lifetime after taxes. So that's the foundational math behind Roth versus traditional. Once you get this right, everything else starts to make sense. However, understanding the math is just the first step. The real challenge is figuring out how to apply this to your specific situation, especially if you're already in retirement and trying to manage your different tax brackets year by year. That's where things get more complex, and it's easy to make costly mistakes. If you want to see exactly how to build a multi-year Roth conversion strategy that may help reduce your lifetime tax bill, click on this video right now. I walk through a hypothetical client example where strategic planning helped significantly reduce their projected lifetime tax bill. Your results will depend on your specific situation, but don't miss it. I'll see you over there.